All right. Well, I'm going to get us started because we're a couple minutes in and we have a lot to get through. Um, hi everyone. Welcome to the Grow Farmer Forum on Targeted Spray Technologies. I'm Emily Unglesby. I'm the Director of Outreach and Extension here at Grow. And we have a really great panel lined up for you. I have Dr. Rodrigo Werle, who is with the University of Wisconsin. He's an extension weed scientist and also a member of the Take Action Herbicide Resistance Management Group, and has done a lot of work and research on a lot of these different technologies we'll be talking about today. And then for our farmer panel, we have Jesse Brunner, who's from Elmira, Washington, and he's been using the Weed It for many years now and has a lot of experience with that system. And then back to the Midwest, we have Tyler Troiola, who's from Wisconsin and is running the See&Spray Premium. And then down in Southwest Kansas, Clint Reese is running the See&Spray Ultimate. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves in more detail here shortly. I do want to make a note that neither Grow or Take Action are trying to endorse any particular system that we talk about here today. Obviously, we're going to hear a lot about the two that are represented on this panel, but there are others out there, and Dr. Werle will talk about some of the other options. We're just really interested in talking to farmers who are actually using this equipment, and these are the farmers that we have and the systems we have to talk about today. So before I hand it over to them, which I know is what you're all here for, I just want to do a quick little plug. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with the Grow Network. We're a network of scientists and outreach specialists who are coordinating research on integrated weed management options, things like cover crops, harvest weed seed control, precision weed tech, like what we're talking about today. And our website really aims to be sort of a national resource on all things weed management. So you can head over there. The URL here is up here. You can subscribe for weekly news and updates. And then the other organization I want to talk about that's represented here is the Take Action Herbicide Resistance Management Group, another group of weed scientists. This is funded by the United Soybean Board, so they really represent the big soybean states in the U.S., and they're also focused on best management practices for farmers to manage herbicide resistance. So I have their current website up here as well, where you can find all of their resources. Grow is actually transitioning to manage the outreach and communications for this group too. So there you will see a new website location for all of their resources in the coming year, and we'll be sure to let people know when that happens. But for now, these are the places you can find us. So head on over there when you can. Finally, just a few housekeeping things. This is a Zoom webinar, so you as a participant are muted, but we have a chat box where you can let us know of any issues you're having, and then a Q&A box where you can send your questions in as they arise. We're probably going to save most of them until the end, unless there's one that really slips in well to what we're talking about at the moment. But you can just put everything you're thinking there. We have two other weed scientists on the call, Dr. Michael Flesner from Virginia Tech and Dr. Mark Van Gessel from Delaware, and they're going to be watching that chat box and popping in at the appropriate moment with questions. So this webinar should run about 90 minutes, or at least up to 90 minutes. So hang in there with us. We are offering the 1.5 CCA continuing education credits in crop management, pest management, and precision ag. So we will put those up at the end, and that's the timeline we're looking at. So I think that is everything I wanted to tell you all. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Dr. Werle introduce himself and talk to you guys a little bit more about targeted spray technologies.
Well, thank you very much, Emily. Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. I am very, very excited to be here. I am honored to serve as the guest moderator for this Grow Farmer Forum. We have three outstanding farmers from different parts of the United States that will be sharing their experiences with us today. So I myself, just like you all, I truly look forward to hearing what they have to say and share. So with that, I'm just going to quickly share my screen. I have a few initial slides that I would like to go over before we start, learning from the farmers themselves. So, Emily, can you just confirm you can see my slides there, please?
Yes, they're up now.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So today we're going to be discussing targeted spray technologies. There's a lot of excitement about these technologies right now. But the one thing I wanted to say is that some of these technologies have been around for a long period of time. Okay. If you think about the weed seeker, for instance, those technologies have been available since the mid 90s. The one big difference now with the advancement of machine learning, artificial intelligence, hardware, and the software out there, the more recent technologies that we're going to be hearing about today, they can differentiate crops and weeds. Okay, so some of the technologies, such as the one that Jesse Berner is going to be talking about today, the Weed It, it can do what we call green on brown. Okay, so it detects vegetation, and anytime it detects vegetation, it triggers an application, like you can see in this image here in the left. Okay, and these technologies are very, very valuable for pre-plant burn down or for areas where we have extended fallow periods. It can really help us target, apply our herbicide only where the weeds are. And again, now if you look on the scenario on the right, this is what technologies such as Green Eye and the John Deere See&Spray can offer, where we can do what we now call green on green. So we have our sprayers traveling the fields. They have this camera-based system that can detect the crop, differentiate the crop from the weeds, and only trigger the weeds. Okay, so this is very, very exciting. Two contrasting technologies, and depending on the farmer needs, they might decide one versus the other. Okay, as Emily said, today we're going to be hearing a lot about the weeded system. We're also going to be hearing a lot about the John Deere See&Spray technology. But what I want to point out is that there are other technologies available out there for farmers, either commercially available right now or soon to become commercially available. I found this image here on the left on the internet, and what this image shows here is the 13 different entities that are currently in this market of precision spraying. So again, I just want to make you aware there are multiple companies out there bringing these technologies to market. So for the next 10 minutes or so, I just would like to set the stage and talk about some of the research that we are conducting here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, looking at design and operation considerations for targeted spray technologies. And I want to acknowledge my PhD student, Zaim Uglijic, who's done a lot of the work that I'm going to be presenting here for the next few minutes. So some of these are the main takeaways from our work, our research we've been doing here over the past 3 years. We were very fortunate to have access to the One Smart Spray technology. And the One Smart Spray is a joint venture between BASF and Bosch, okay, and powered by their Xarvio digital ag platform. So over the past 3 years, we had access to this technology, which has been instrumental for us to learn more about targeted spraying. So the main takeaways from our research over the past 3 years has been that we believe that these technologies are very well suited for fields that have low weed infestations, okay? And one way that our farmers can help these technologies be successful is through the use of effective soil residual herbicides. Because the more effective our soil residual herbicides are, the fewer weeds we're going to need to control, especially when thinking about a green on green application. I'm going to make the case for that. And then the second part of my presentation, I want to discuss a little bit of concern that we have regarding spray swath displacement, where when we're only targeting areas where weeds are. Okay, so I'm going to be discussing on that a little bit as well. So this is a summary from my PhD student, Zaim Muglijic. So we've conducted this trial over multiple locations and multiple years. I have selected 4 different scenarios to share with you today. So again, this research here was conducted using the One Smart Spray technology. And in front of you, I have foliar herbicide savings during our post-emergence application. And for these experiments here, we were looking at savings in soybean cropping systems using a foliar application of glyphosate, Liberty plus, no, glyphosate Roundup plus Liberty, which is glufosinate. Okay, so 2 herbicides used as part of our foliar application. And the one thing that really got our attention here, it goes back to my initial remarks, is the importance of that weed infestation at the time of application. So Zaim had 2 locations that had very low weed pressure at the time of post-application, and that was our Seymour, Illinois, 2024 A and B, so 2 studies with low weed pressure. And in the scenarios where we had very low weed pressures, whether we triggered an application at early V2 growth stage or what we call late application, which was a V4 growth stage, we had anywhere between 67 to 81% savings. Okay, so in scenarios where we have low weed pressure, we could capture up to 81% savings. Okay, now on the flip end, our Janesville location, we had a good pre-emergence herbicide, but the infestation in this field was incredibly high. At this location where we had very high weed pressure, our savings of our foliar herbicides was only 2%. Okay, so it's very important to understand that these technologies are going to do very well. They're going to provide the savings that we want to see when we have low weed infestations. And that's the conclusion from Zaim's research. Low weed pressure, the use of soil residual herbicides, and early post applications are key factors for achieving effective weed control and maximizing herbicide savings with targeted spray technologies. Okay, so I want to use these pictures here just to illustrate what I just said. Okay, so these pictures are from separate trials, but they reflect what we learned from Zaim's trial. The scenario on the left here is where we didn't have a good pre-emergence herbicide. This is actually a commercial farm field south of Madison, Wisconsin, at the O'Brien family farms, where we do a lot of research. Okay, so this is natural field conditions, high infestation of water hemp in soybeans. So left, no pre-emergence herbicide. In the middle here, we have a good pre-emergence herbicide, and on the right, we have an excellent pre-emergence herbicide. If we were to target spray these areas, obviously on the left, we would treat the entire area, so no value of targeted spraying technologies. In the middle here, there is benefit, but there's still a quite amount of area here that ends up being treated. And on the right, here's the best case scenario for technology, for resistance management, okay, where a very strong pre-emergence herbicide was applied, and we have few weeds established to be controlled in season. So again, residual herbicides being very important. And again, maybe this technology is better suited for those fields with lower weed infestation. So that is the first part of my talk. I'm then going to move to the second part, which is a little bit of a concern that we have as far as this technologies goes, that we want to share with growers. So if they were to pursue these technologies, they would be aware of this. Okay. So first is boom height stability. So I'm going to play a video here. And this is a video of the One Smart Spray technology for the small plot research that we do. Okay, it's a front mounted boom, but hopefully if you're paying attention to the video, look how that boom is going up and down. Okay, if we're only triggering a few nozzles at a time, and if that boom is going up and down, when that boom goes up, we are always underdosing the amount of herbicide we want to deliver. The other concern that we saw when we were working in our research is what I've been calling spray swath displacement. Okay, so this is an application in Nebraska at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Zaim was there with her colleague Chris Proctor establishing a trial. The day they had about 5 to 6 mile per hour wind. So you see the tractor is traveling this way. The wind is coming the way you see in the image there, 5-6 mile per hour wind. Okay, so that nozzle was triggered upon weed detection. We had a really good chemical program in the tank, but because the wind was blowing my spray pattern away, we didn't get good coverage of our weeds, right? And this is something to be, mindful of, because if you have good technology detecting weed, you have good chemical program, but conditions are not right, you're not killing weed, that is a problem, okay? And we saw that clearly in our research. So here's an experiment that Zyme has conducted over the past 2 years here at Arlington Agricultural Research Station in Wisconsin, okay? Look at what's happening with the spray pattern. So I'm gonna play this again. So this is a scenario where we're trying to optimize savings, and by optimizing savings, what I'm trying to do is only trigger one nozzle at a time, okay? And in this case, there was a 3 mile per hour wind, and you see the displacement of that spray swath. So this research project that we conducted that was led by Zaim, we looked at number of nozzles, we looked at boom height, and we looked at nozzle types. So long story short, what we learned is that when there was multiple nozzle activation upon weed detection, we always had better spray coverage, which always led to better weed control. Okay, so I know it's very tempting to optimize saving by only triggering one nozzle, but if the conditions are not right in the sense that you have boom sway or wind during application, triggering only one nozzle, in our opinion, can be risky. Okay, and we got to remember that at the end of the day, savings is very important, right? It's a tremendous benefit of these technologies, but we want to control the weeds. We have some very difficult weeds to control out there, and in order to control them, we got to get full coverage with our applications. Okay, so in conclusion of the latter part of my portion here, of my presentation here, is that wind conditions, nozzle selection, and boom height can have major impact on spray quality and weed control. And that's true not only for targeted applications, that's also true for broadcast applications. However, we do believe that activation of multiple nozzles upon weed detection is going to be very important, because when you have multiple nozzles being activated upon weed detection, we have more consistent spray coverage and we have enhanced weed control. Okay, so those were the slides I wanted to share with you to set the stage here. I want to thank our sponsors and our supporters, the One Smart Spray Group with BSF, for letting us work with the technology. It's been a tremendous honor and pleasure. But I also want to thank the farmer groups that sponsor our research, such as the National Corn Growers Association, the North Central Soybean Research Program, the United Soybean Board, and then locally here for me here in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Soybean Marketing Board and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association. Okay, our research, we're always conducting our research to support our farmers. So we always have our farmers in mind when conducting our research. It has to be relevant to the growers. And lastly, I want to just take a moment to acknowledge my amazing Whisk Weeds team, which you see here in the right. They are the ones doing tremendous work. So I get to be here today doing this. So with that, Emily, I'm going to stop sharing my slide. Okay. And then we're going to start the part that I think everybody is very, very excited about, which is hearing from our panelists here, our farmers. Okay. With that, I'm going to start. Then I'm going to ask our farmers to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their operation. And the way we're going to do this, we're going to start from the west and then come our way east. All right. So first, I'm going to invite Jesse Brunner to introduce himself. And then Jesse, if you don't mind, please sharing a little bit about your operation.
Oh, good morning, everybody. I'm Jesse Brunner, and I'm a fifth generation farmer in eastern Washington State. I farm about 4,200 acres. I'm in a 12-inch annual rainfall zone. Most of that comes during the winter. So I grow predominantly fall-seeded canola, wheat, and peas. Those are generally planted after year of fallow, so I get one crop every 2 years.
Thank you, Jesse. So next, we're going to move to Kansas. And from Kansas, we have Clint Reese. Clint, floor is yours, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Clint Reese of Southwest Family Farms in southwest corner of Kansas. We have a diverse grain operation farm with my parents and a brother. We have irrigation down here on about a third of our acres, where we grow a bean rotation, corn one year, beans the next year, so very similar to the Corn Belt. Then we also have corn wheat rotation on some lower gallon wells. Then we also have quite a few dryland acres, and our dryland mix is usually wheat, corn, fallow, so 2 crops in 3 years, or milo, wheat, fallow, 2 crops in 3 years that way. Sometimes if we're wet, we'll have 3 crops in 4 years on dry land. Average rainfall is about 15 to 18 inches, depends on the year. So we are trying to keep weeds out of the field when we're fallow so we can keep things clean and grow a crop.
Excellent. Thank you, Clint. Tyler, speaking from Wisconsin this morning as well, right, Tyler?
Morning, everybody. Sorry about that. I just want to give a shout out to the Wisconsin basketball team Friday night for their big win. I'm going to forget about the football game on Saturday, but we had a big reason to celebrate in Madison Friday night, so that's exciting. As Rodrigo said, I'm from southeastern Wisconsin. Eagles, the town, we're right in Jefferson. Eagles and Waukesha, we farm a lot in Jefferson County too. We run about 2,800 acres. A lot of that is corn soybean rotation. We also have some winter wheat in the rotation on about a third of our acres. We've been all no-till on our farm for about 20 years, and we found out about the See&Spray system at the National No-Till Conference last year and thought it would be a great fit because we have fairly low weed pressure in our area on our farm, and we have about 100%, 90 to 100% cover crops on every acre. So we thought between cover crops and no-till, we are a 2-spray system anyway as it is. We thought this See&Spray would have a great fit, and we gave it a try. 2024 was our first year. So thanks for having me on the panel.
Excellent. Yeah, so we're super excited with the breadth and scope that's going to be covered here today with the various cropping systems and situations that we have and technologies. So I'm going to go into our next question here. And then Tyler, maybe I'm going to have you go first. So the question is, what did weed management look like in your operation historically? And then when did you adopt the sprayer, and how was that and how has that changed weed management for you? And I know you adopted it last year, or this year was your first year, so how have things changed for you since you adopted technology?
Yeah, we kind of jumped into it under the gun. I think we ordered the sprayer in January, February. Of course, it didn't show up till after we were done with planning and had first pass done. So historically, I would say at least the last 10 years, we've been a 2-pass program where we put a residual out front and then contact herbicide to kill the cover crop and any annual weeds or any weeds that have emerged in the spring. And then we come back 20 to 30 days later, beans, it's like R1, corn, anywhere from V3 to V5, lay down another pass and hope to get that through canopy. So we still did a 2 spray system. With See&Spray, we just decided to go heavier on our pre's in the first pass, and then with only having the See&Spray and not the ultimate, we just had the premium, not the ultimate. We weren't able to lay down a 100% broadcast residual at the same time we were spraying, so we just decided to put a contact spray in the tank on the second pass for See&Spray. Learned a lot this year. I think we still have a lot to learn in fine tuning, but I'm excited to be on this panel just to learn from other experiences. And we're not the expert on it, but we were happy with what we saw, and we kind of knew going into it, the rudimentary system, all the kinks aren't worked out, but we kind of wanted to be on the cutting edge of that to see if there was any advantages to it and kind of learn along with it. So.
Thank you, Tyler. And do you mind sharing what are the main weeds that you deal with in your operation?
I would say water hemp is a big problem around here. We've had issues with mare's tail in the past. Giant ragweed is a big one. A lot of grasses, foxtail. Rodrigo can speak to. We're kind of from the same area. I think those are probably the big 3 or 4. A lot more out there. We have dandelions in the spring and no-till, but those are fairly easy to control. Those are the ones I can think of offhand.
That's excellent. And then Tyler actually wrote about your situation, right? Where earlier this year, where you purchased the equipment, you upgraded to the See&Spray Premium, which can only do. It's different from the system that Clint is going to describe later. So you can only do spot spraying. You don't have the dual boom technology in your operation. So you alluded that you went a little heavier with your pre-emergence upfront. Was that enough for you to overcome the fact that you didn't have a layered residual as part of your post application because you only did the spot for your post program? Did that provide season long weed control?
I would say in our operation in this 1 year, it did. I don't know that we got lucky. I would like to think that it worked because in years past, sometimes we don't put residual down with that second pass. But I think a big thing we have in our advantage is we have a pretty low seed bank, and our cereal rye cover crop that we kill off at planting creates a good foundation and a good mat that kind of physically suppresses weeds. I know Rodrigo has done some work on this. We were very happy with the control this year. The only spot that had its downfall, we had a lot more rain than average this year. We had a lot of drowned out spots. I would argue that even if you had residual in the tank, they don't work when it's underwater and there was so much rain, it would have been washed away. So the only spots we really had weeds this year was where there was no crop and drowned out areas. But I would say in the crop, we were very happy with what we saw.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tyler. So Clint, I'll pass to you to share, historically, your major weed problems being in Kansas. I would assume either Palmer or Kosher. You can probably relate to that. I spent some time in Nebraska and, eastern Nebraska and southwest Nebraska, so I've got to see some of that. But I'll pass it on to you, Clint.
Sure. So our weed control program is still similar to what it was before. We do put pre-emerge down. Usually we're not we're tank mixing a Roundup in there with it to kill anything that's up then. So we're not using the dual tank system. Our main purpose for the dual tank system was we used to grow cotton. And it works really well in cotton where we're spraying every 2 weeks a growth regulator. We can throw in Liberty in the second tank or Enlist or whatever and control weeds. Always before we would only put the herbicide down every 4 weeks because it was expensive. With the See&Spray system, we could do it every 2 weeks. So whenever we would have big weeds on the edges, it would help to get them under control. And then the middles would be clean, so we'd waste all that chemical. But with the See&Spray system, it kind of took care of that issue and let us keep all the weeds under control whenever it was small. For other crops, where we're seeing the benefit for the See&Spray is one of our main things is in grain sorghum. Where we grow that, we have an opportunity to put down quinclorac, which was really good for controlling or helping suppress bindweed. We have some bindweed issues where wildlife spread it from field to field out in far western Kansas. So we would go back into our milo crop with a quinclorac and some 2,4-D, and being able to spot spray that was good because it saved a lot of money because of the cost of that chemical. And then the 2,4-D can cause the milo to want to lay down a little bit, and so being able to spot spray that rather than broadcast, I think helped yields and didn't damage the milo. So that was another advantage that's hard to calculate, but I think it is an advantage. We've used it in soybeans quite a bit. We run 15-inch soybeans, so they'll canopy early. So we'll usually do a See&Spray application before they canopy, and then a lot of times we'll do one after they canopy to clean up any volunteer corn or Johnson grass or things like that come up through the canopy. And I know we're not getting anything that's down below, but by that point, if it's below the canopy, it's probably not going to cause a huge issue. So everything above, it's able to recognize and control it, and that's been another big advantage.
Yeah, thank you, Clint. So the point you made about being able to spray that 2,4-D and quinclorac, which can be a little costly and yet minimize the crop response, we do see that as a tremendous benefit of the technologies. Kind of bringing it back here to Wisconsin, thinking about our corn portfolio. Sometimes the foliar products that we want to use at a full rate, maybe they're a little too expensive, but if we can target apply them, that's certainly a benefit. So thank you for sharing and for bringing that up. Jesse, I'm going to pass it on to you now.
Yeah, so I kind of farm in the desert, so most of my weed control is done during the fallow year. Traditionally in my area, that was done through tillage, though we've been no-till since about 1999, so all of our fallow is chemical fallow. Yeah, we're definitely farming on a budget. So my goal in the past has been to try and get through my whole fallow year on less than 20 bucks an acre in herbicide. And that's gotten really tough the past few years. And so that's where the targeted spray technology has really been a big benefit to us. Herbicide resistance is a huge concern. We're predominantly relying on Roundup and maybe some paraquat. So with the targeted spray technology, I can do mixes that are a lot more expensive, a lot more aggressive without breaking the bank. After we get our crop in the ground, if we're lucky, we'll have a wet fall and we'll do an in-crop application in the fall. But usually it's one application in the spring, and that's just done broadcast. And that's pretty much it for us for weed control. It's one advantage of not getting a lot of rain. Once our crop canopy's over, we don't have anything to worry about.
Excellent. Thank you, Jesse. So I think that's going to be a good segue for our third question. And then Emily is going to start sharing some slides. So Jesse, I'm going to start off with you. If you could please, describe the system which you've been using in your case, the weeded technology. So I'll let you take it from here.
Sure. So my weed it was put on a flex coil wheel broom sprayer. I have a $120,000 weed it on a $10,000 sprayer, but that's how we get the job done. It's used entirely pre-plant burn down. Yeah, I've been running a weed it system for about 6 years now. I've had my own system for the past 2 years. Prior to that, a buddy of mine had his on a self-propelled sprayer, and I used his system. It's a pretty amazing piece of technology. It is quite remarkable how small the weeds it'll get, down to about an eraser head size. Once it's dialed in, it doesn't miss. It's pretty good. Other than that, the system is based sensors every 40 inches and nozzles every 10. Each nozzle is individually controlled and uses PWM technology so that it compensates for speed and for going around corners, so you get consistent application, regardless of where you're driving. It's pretty resistant to dust, though that can be an issue. When I'm traveling, I'm going, somewhere between up to 9 to 10 miles an hour. So we move right along, cover the acres pretty quickly. I guess, what else would you like me to describe about the system?
No, I think that's excellent. In a nutshell, would you be able to kind of explain how the system detects the weeds, Jesse, so we can differentiate that from the technologies that enable green on green? Because if I'm not mistaken, your technology, the weed it, only allows for applications what we call green on brown, right?
Right. So it is an optical system like the others, but it's not using image recognition. It takes advantage of the fact that chlorophyll reflects a very specific wavelength of light. And so any time it detects a increase in that specific frequency of light that's reflected, it kicks the nozzle on. So it can't differentiate between weeds, but it can detect really small ones. And as far as like how well the technology works, it'll work up to 15 miles an hour. At that point, what limits me is just how fast I can drag a sprayer over the ground. It's definitely it's pretty well refined technology. It's been out for like over 15 years, and it works very well in this area.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. One question that I have for you, and then I'm going to have for the other farmers as well. It sounds like you farm where you have a lot of crop residue, right, from your previous crop. Does that interfere with the ability of this system to detect weeds?
It depends. I harvest most of my cereal grains, the stripper header, so that leaves nice tall stubble. And the weed it will work in that, but it's not great. For a number of reasons, I'll usually leave my stubble tall over the winter and then come back in the early spring and mow it down around 10 or 12 inches tall. And at that point, the weed it has no problem detecting the weeds. But if you do have a really thick residue sticking up, that could be an issue. If the residue is lying flat in the ground, that's actually ideal because that helps suppress the weeds, and anything that pokes through that residue is going to get hammered. So residue's good.
And the other question that I have for you, Jesse, I think I covered that on my presentation a little bit, the importance of boom stability. And then I watched the Grow video where they were out there, right? I interviewed you in your farm, and then you talked about having the wheel system there helping you keep your boom stable. I think your experiences and our findings from our research align quite well that it is very important for that boom to be stable. So if you don't mind, could you please comment on that?
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm a big proponent of a wheel boom sprayer for weededs. I think probably most are installed on self or on suspended booms, but I definitely feel the system works better on a wheel boom. Since you only have sensors every 40 inches, it's looking down at an angle, and so that sensor is only going to line up with the nozzle at one height. If you deviate above or below that, it's not going to line up. And then the issue you brought up before, where your rate changes on height if you're only firing one nozzle because there's no overlap. So you're only going to get your desired application rate at one height as well. If your ground is really flat and it's smooth, suspended boom system probably works just fine. But that's not what I work with here. So wheel boom is definitely better for me. Kind of interestingly, I'm actually able to drive a lot faster with the wheel boom sprayer than when I was using my buddy's suspended boom, just because of the boom stability.
Excellent. And then for farmers out there willing to adopt this, do you have a recommendation as far as how much would you push as if it's a kind of a windy day? The reason why I ask is because here, in the Midwest, spring comes, early summer comes, it's always windy, right? And when you have, let's say, a 90-foot boom, all nozzles are activated, this displacement is not as concerning to me. Of course, there's concerns there, but not that you're going to miss a weed. But if you're only, triggering one nozzle, treating like 15 or 20-inch band area there, if there's wind, it pushes things around. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's one area where having the wheel boom sprayer helps as well, because I can run my nozzles a lot lower to the ground. I have my nozzles 20 inches off the ground, which is about as low as I dare go. The nozzle selection has helped that a lot with that as well. For a while there wasn't good nozzle choices because I'm only spraying a 10-inch wide band. So 110-degree nozzles are way too wide. I'm running 25 or 40-degree nozzles. And there wasn't a lot to choose from for a while, but now we have better ones, allow us to use a larger droplet size, which helps a lot with the wind drift issue. And I can make up for the reduced coverage of a larger droplet by just running higher gallons per acre. When you're only applying to 10% of your acres, I can hog the water on there. It just doesn't matter. That way I get good coverage, but also very resistant to drift, because we got wind here too.
You hit the nail. No, thank you for sharing that, Jesse. Thanks a lot. This was awesome. So I guess we'll pass it on to Tyler now. So Jesse covered a technology that allows us to do what we call, again, green on brown, right? So now we're going to talk a little bit about technologies that let us do green on green. So Tyler's going to share his experience with the See&Spray Premium. And then Tyler, if you don't mind, just describe, what does that premium stand for on the See&Spray technology?
Okay, yeah. So this system we mounted on a John Deere 4038 sprayer that has exact apply nozzle bodies. So every 15-inch, it has nozzles that turn on and off on their own with section control already. So as part of the See&Spray Premium kit, that just means that you can do green on green spraying. The ultimate kit is where you have the dual tank and can put down a residual. So with the Premium, you can either spray or not spray. You can't be putting down residual and spot spraying at the same time. So as you can kind of see in these pictures, the triangle looking things on the top of the boom hold the camera. And I think, don't quote me, but I think there's about 36 cameras over the 120-foot boom. And it takes a picture, and then through machine learning and probably some artificial intelligence, it picks out weeds. And then I think we're rated for 12 miles an hour. It can pick it and then turn on those certain nozzles. I'm not positive how many nozzles it turns on. It seems like when you look back, there's always 2 or 3 nozzles on at the same time. There is a setting in there for how big a buffer zone you have. So if it sees a weed, how big a spot it sprays. And while you were talking, I think right now mine's set to 10 inches long. It'll spray, and then about 4 inches wide on each side of the weed. So technically with a 15-inch nozzle, it would only need not one nozzle on, but it seems like it always has 2 or 3 on. I'm quite simply amazed at how well the system has worked. I know part of adapting this premium kit onto an existing sprayer, they went through, and you can see some of the pictures of the computer systems there, or the controllers, or I'm sure there's a more technical term for them, but those big silver boxes are all the computers. They also went through and put all new springs and all new bushings on the boom to help with that boom stability, like Rodrigo was talking. So it the boom is actually where it thinks it is. Because as you get out 60 feet on the tip of your boom, if you're going 12 miles an hour, that boom's going a heck of a lot faster than that on the end. So it had to have real tight bushings, real tight springs to try to stabilize the boom a little bit more. I would say, if anything, with this system, I was skeptical of it actually hitting and killing weeds. From my experience, it oversprays a lot more than it undersprays, which from a chemical saving isn't as good, but our goal is to kill weeds, and that's how I would prefer to do it. You can see on this slide here on the left, those are pictures we took. We were out spraying. It was no-till corn. The corn was about V4. And I think that's a little lamb's quarter. Rodrigo might have to help me there, but I think that's a quarter laying down. And as you can see by the spray paper, it nailed it at 12 miles an hour. The center screen is kind of what you see in the cab, shows you when your boom turns on and off. Judging by that picture on there, it looks like it sprayed a much wider swath than 15-inch. So I would guess it had 3 or 4 nozzles on at a time. And then the right picture kind of gives you a sense of what we sprayed a lot of. That's corn, about V4, planted into cereal rye cover. The rye was killed at planting. And after we bought the system, we had a heck of a lot of questions whether the system would even work with residue like that being taller than the corn. Some people said I was an idiot. It wouldn't work at all. It would just spray 100% of the time because that cover is so tall, but it worked flawless. So we were really happy with that. I don't think all the credit in this situation can go to the See&Spray for clean fields, because that cereal rye cover gives a heck of a lot of competition to weeds coming up. This field, in particular on the right, I would say was sprayed on the early side. So from our experience, the earlier you sprayed, the more cost savings you had, because the corn was shorter, pick up weeds. The weeds were smaller too, but then it gives you a lot more time to canopy for more weeds to emerge after spraying. So the biggest thing for us is just trying to time your spray application with See&Spray to when your crop is going to canopy, and that depends on moisture and rain and growing degree units coming up. So there's a lot of play. Fortunately for us, we have a self-propelled sprayer for our own farm, do a little bit of custom, but it's not one of those things where I have to be in the sprayer seat 12 hours a day every day to get over everything. So we have some time and are actually able to scout fields and manage appropriately to make systems like this work. What other questions do you have, Rodrigo?
I think this is fantastic, Tyler. I asked you the question, how the system was handling the residue from the cover crops there, and you said the system could detect the weeds just fine, which to me is very exciting, like you alluded to, and like you're seeing in your operation when we have a good pre-emergence herbicide program, plus the cereal rye cover crop biomass early season. It really helps with, reducing weed infestations that we need to control post-emergence. That's what we're seeing in our research, but I'm also happy to hear that that's what you're seeing there. The fact that you ran your own testing there, for detecting the weeds, that's outstanding. And you made a comment, the whole debate I was talking earlier, optimizing savings versus killing weeds. Maybe we're not saving to the extent we could, but at least we're being sure that we're hitting the weeds here. I think that's a very very important point. And this testing that you're showing here, Tyler, if I'm not mistaken, I think you indicated earlier this year that you ran this testing in no-till, in tilled scenario, as well as with the covers. Is that accurate, Tyler?
That's correct. So we covered a little bit of everything. We have some rented ground that hasn't been long-term no-till, was actually worked this spring. It seemed to work in every aspect. The one thing I will say about running the system in tilled fields is that dust can seem to play a big part in it. I have some maps. They're not on these slides, but it shows pretty much wherever behind the wheel tracks, the nozzles were on all the time because it kicked up enough dust that the cameras couldn't see and just sprayed. So in those fields, the savings was less. And I think a lot of that is just because it was spraying where the wheel tracks are, which aren't necessarily a bad thing, but somewhat of a downfall of the conventional system. I'm trying to think of some other takeaways that we had between the systems. The first field I sprayed, we pulled in and it was right on the edge of, I think John Deere labels the green on green spraying in corn at about 16 inches tall, which be anywhere from V4 to V5. This corn was right at V5, and it was 16 to 18 inches tall. And we pulled in, and I went and passed around the headlands. And I didn't think the See&Spray was working because it sprayed almost 90%. And I think it's just because when the crop is there and the corn is there and the canopy is that tall, it can't distinguish between corn and weeds, so it sprays. And then the headlands, the field had a history of being alfalfa a few years ago, and there was a lot of grass and more weed pressure on the headlands, and it sprayed almost 90%. I'm like, well, I just wasted a hell of a lot of money on this system for 10% of savings. And then once you get off the headlands into the meat of the field, that's when it does its thing, and it's truly quite amazing to watch.
That's excellent. The whole debate that you described, when to trigger that application, because if you go too early, there's more weeds to come. You got to come back, or if you wait too much, it's hard to control them. And sometimes you don't benefit a whole lot from the savings. That's what we saw with Zaim's research. So I think that's one advantage when you are in charge of the sprayer, right? Whereas if you rely on somebody else to come and spray, the timing might not be as ideal for the use of the technology. So thank you for sharing all that, Tyler. And that's going to be actually a pretty good segue to Clint. So with Jesse, we learned about technology, the weeded that can do green and brown, and then Tyler talked about technology from John Deere See&Spray Premium that can do the spot spray only. But now we move to Kansas with Clint, and Clint has the See&Spray Ultimate, and the Ultimate can do a little more, right, or quite more than what Tyler just described as far as capabilities of that sprayer goes. So with that, Clint, I'm going to pass it to you, please.
Thank you. So the Ultimate system with the dual tank, like I said earlier, the main use for that on our farm was in cotton. And other than that, we don't use the two tank system a lot. How I would describe the John Deere system is it's like a targeted broadcast system. It's not a spot spray system. We're still using 120-inch wide 3D nozzles on our system. So, and it's turning on 3 nozzles minimum anytime it sees a weed. So it's broadcasting. So you're not getting that real heavy dose in a 10-inch band. You're getting just that 3 nozzle system turns on to hit that one weed. So you've got your overlap of your, say it's right underneath the middle nozzle, then the other 2 nozzles are overlapping, 50%, hopefully, if you have the right boom height. And so that's taking care of getting adequate coverage. I think that helps with the wind issue with some of those systems, because now I've got 3 nozzles and I'm probably going to get better coverage. So I think the coverage is better there. One other advantage of the dual tank system is it's got a carbon fiber truss boom on it, and that we run another 2 different sprayers. The other sprayer has the premium system on it with the green boom that is metal, and then we run this one as well. And you can tell a difference in the boom. The boom is much more stable, reacts much quicker, and maintains that height to the ground much more efficiently than the green boom does. It has a different control on the back, I believe, that just makes it react a little better. And I think the lighter weight all the way out there helps make it react a little quicker and more consistent with whatever, staying with the ground height that you need. And so that's another advantage of it. One thing, we did have issues with dust, like everybody's talked about, but they did come out this summer and put some experimental cameras up on front of the front tires. So they moved the cameras that are back behind the tires on the boom to the front. That eliminated my dust issue. We do some ground that's been worked. So, and as you can see, this ground here is pretty bare, and you can see the dust behind the machine a little bit. Moving those cameras to the front eliminated the dust issue. There can be just a little bit of an issue with shading, especially early in the morning, late in the afternoon, when the sun's low on the horizon, and you'll sometimes get a little bit of a shading effect behind the sprayer where it's got the everything that attaches the boom to the sprayer. It can cause a little bit of a shading issue where you might over broadcast at times. That's pretty minimal compared to the dust issue, but we do see that. And you'll also see it if you have much of a canopy and your rows are running a north-south direction. Whenever the sun's low or at either horizon, you can see that it might have a little bit of a shading issue, and it's a little harder to detect things. It usually defaults to spray in those situations, but very, very pleased with the performance. I think we have just very, very minimal weed skips, if any at all. It's constantly improving. I know they are taking this information and improving the detection system and making it even better. The very first year we tested it, we had some issues with one weed they couldn't pick up, but they come out and downloaded a bunch of data and put that imagery into the system, and it fixed the issue. So I think it's constantly improving. I think it'll continue to get better, and like I said, been very pleased with the performance. One other thing with the dual tank system, though, if you do want to run as a single tank system or a broadcast application or whatever, you do have to fill each tank separately, and you have to do the chemical in each tank separately. And so that's one of the things that is a little bit of a problem with it, I guess, or an issue, or just takes a little more time, is you do have to do two different tank mixes. You have a 450 and a 750 gallon tank, so you have to have a system that'll, we use a system that controls that, where I can just put in the tank size and it makes the mix for me. So it's a quick draw system, I believe, and so that was something that we did to help simplify the filling process, because you do have to put chemical in both tanks. You can't just put it in one and think it'll mix it. It's got to be done separately.
Thank you, Clint. A question that I have for you when using the dual tank system, have you used in a scenario where you spot spray your foliar products and then you do a layered residual, or perhaps you use that broadcast boom for another type of application that needs to be delivered to the entire area, whether it's insecticide or fungicide? Have you used the technology that way?
We have a little bit. It's not very often that we do it that way, but we have done that, where we're broadcasting out of the bigger tank and then doing a See&Spray application out of the front tank. If we're looking for a specific weed, we might put that in the front tank and just have it run the See&Spray application. And we're trying to broadcast down some residual stuff in the back tank. Even have looked at things that maybe don't mix real well together. When your atrazines and your Roundups, maybe put an atrazine in the back tank that's broadcast and Roundup in the front tank. So there's some things like that we've experimented with a little bit to see if that helps, but not utilized a lot. Like I said, cotton was the big reason for it, and but there are guys I know that are looking at that, even in corn and different things, trying to broadcast, and we just haven't got that brave or that smart yet, I guess.
Excellent. Yeah, because that's one of the benefits that we see with the dual tank system, right? It really expands the possibilities when you're making your applications. So thank you for sharing out all that. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to skip one question because I think you guys tackled them quite well. I'm going to ask, how, the big question that's going to come next is a two-part question, right? So how has this technology affected your herbicide costs? If you're seeing savings, what are you doing with them? Are you trying to bring that back as profit, or are you reinvesting as part of your weed control? And then the other piece is, the machinery cost and the subscription fees, right? The machinery cost and ROI for a farmer that's considering, maybe purchasing a technology like this. What are the points you tell them to consider? And if you could describe the subscription fees that you pay. And then maybe, Clint, since I got you on the screen here, I'm going to start off with you.
Sure. First of all, we do think we're seeing savings. I looked at our history this year, and we averaged between a third and a half of the acre, or a quarter of the acre sprayed. So that's a pretty significant savings just in volume of chemical we use. So we do believe we are saving money with it. I don't have an exact number to tell you what it is, but it's something that I think does pay for itself. We've run it different systems over the last 4 or 5 years, and think it is definitely worth investing in. The equipment side of it, the dual tank system is expensive. It's an expensive investment up front, but we believe that it will pay for itself. We have traded a dual tank system, and we've received fair value for that trade. It wasn't dinged because it's something new, or there wasn't a big demand for it. So I think there's not very many of them out there. So I think it retained its value. So I think the systems will continue to retain their value. We think it's a good investment, and think it works. The other thing that's hard to quantify, like I said, spraying our milo, where we saw with some crop damage when we're spraying 2,4-D in milo, and where we don't have to spray it broadcast. We think there's some savings there that's hard to quantify, but do believe that it does have some savings there. And so there's some things there that you see as well. And then the per acre fee, I would say the issue there is I think it's changing. I believe Deere's going to acres not applied fee. Not real certain what the number is going to be going forward, but that makes some sense. I guess it's easy to figure, so you know what your tank cost is, know what it costs per acre if it doesn't apply it. So if it's cheaper, then it makes sense to probably use the system on those acres. If your tank mix is more expensive than what that per acre fee and that crop is. So I think there's some value there. The previous fees were minimal. I didn't think they were overly high. I know it's something different. As farmers don't like change, and that's a change that that we probably don't like. But I think in the long run, if you think about the technology, what it would cost for me to buy that without the fees, it probably makes that sprayer very hard to trade or to get to that second and third user. So I think having these fees helps spread that cost of that initial investment these companies have. And so I think it makes it easier for everybody or more farmers to get into the technology. So I think it's probably the way to do it. And even though it is different, and like I said, we don't like change, but I think it's something that once you really look at the numbers, it does make sense. And I think it will pencil for most guys to do it on their farm.
Fantastic. No, thanks for sharing that, Clint. So with that, I'm going to pass to Tyler to share his experiences as well.
Okay, thank you. The reason we decided to invest in this is because we sat down and looked at the amount of money we've spent on chemicals over the last 10 or 20 years. And we said, what has a chemical company ever done for us, or what kickback have we ever got? Obviously, they keep our fields clean and we make money on that, but they invest in themselves, they keep the profit for themselves. And with technology like this, we saw it as a way to be able to invest in technology instead of a chemical company and be able to, I traded to get into the system. I had a Hagie before it was old enough. We couldn't put See&Spray on it. So part of our thinking with investing in this technology was being able to go to See&Spray on a newer John Deere with better technology, Exact Apply, the See&Spray, and help with some of the chemical savings and go towards the cost of the sprayer. I would say that the savings aren't exactly as high as Deere said initially, but I'm happy with the system. As far as the per acre fee goes, the first system we looked at was, I don't remember the exact name, and this isn't an advertisement form, but it was a system that you bought outright and then you owned for your own sprayer. The problem we saw with that is that the out-of-pocket upfront costs were extremely expensive. And then from our standpoint, they had absolutely no reason to stand behind that or warranty that or give you service to make it work through the year. With Deere, historically, it seems like they're trying to go to these per acre fees. What we like about that is it keeps the upfront cost extremely low. And then if their system doesn't work or you're not happy with it, you're going to quit using it. And with the per acre fee changing next year to only acres that weren't sprayed, it forces them to continually improve their system, because if it doesn't work and it falls back for some reason because of dust or speed or because it can't see, that system's spraying and they're not getting paid. So we see it as a way that they have some skin in the game to continually improve. And from what we've seen this year, they've been very good at standing behind it and making it work. We can get into exact details a little later, but as far as our savings, I think over our farm this year that we sprayed corn post, we saw a 65% savings in chemical. Corn chemical post isn't terribly expensive, but that's like a status Roundup mix, so there's some cost there. Soybeans, we didn't see as big of a savings on, but soybean chemical in our area is a lot more expensive, mainly because we use Enlist beans. And to be frank with you, Enlist on its own doesn't do much to control water hemp anymore. So we're doing a tank mix of Enlist and Liberty. You're talking almost a $30 an acre tank mix. So on 30-inch beans, we saw about a 60% savings. On 15-inch beans, I'd be interested to hear what Clint thought. I didn't think it worked as well with a canopy sooner. It seemed to spray more. We only saw about a 36 to 40% savings in the 15-inch beans. It just seemed to spray more because it couldn't distinguish between soybean and weed. What other questions did you have? I can take a minute here, and if you have any other questions, Rodrigo, or what else?
Yeah, no, one of the big ones, and since you posed a question back to Clint, I'll let him address the 15-inch versus 30, his opinion too, because I'm curious on that. My understanding is that the more canopy you have, the more uncertain it is for the systems to detect weeds, and then it just goes back to the default mode, right? But as Clint said, I mean, these technologies are going to continue to evolve by the minute. So I think they're going to get better and better at it. But right now the question is 15 versus 30, if we're seeing differences. And then the one question that I have for the two of you to complement is, what are you doing with your savings, right? So you both mentioned about, a third or half of the area not being treated. That's from Clint. And then for you, Tyler, 65% savings. So the savings, how are you using those savings? Are you bringing that as part of your profit in your operation? Are you reinvesting in your weed control programs?
I guess I can go first because it looks like I'm still unmuted. Being a year into it, it's hard to go ahead and spend this 60% savings because I don't know how well it's going to work every year. And it was a bit of a jump to go from the machine I had to this machine. So I would say with the farming industry the way it is, margins are tight and prices aren't very good right now. Any savings we can get, I don't think anybody's real ambitious to go out and spend. I would say that I think the ultimate package with the dual tank and the dual boom is the best system. From our standpoint, we just made the decision that for the price difference, if we have to make a second application or make a second application just pure residual, was cheaper for us to cover the same acre twice than it was to invest in that sprayer. That said, if these savings continue to show themselves, and like Clint said, if these machines continue to hold their value and we're early adopters, it should make it fairly easy to continue to trade up into better machines with more technology until we get to that ultimate system.
Awesome. Thank you, Clint. I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're putting that savings towards the bottom line right now. Some of that goes to the fees and the equipment costs, so that's eating up some of it. But I still think there's some savings there that we're putting towards our bottom line, and we'll continue to invest in good pre-emerge program. I think that's key, is to do a good job of trying to keep weeds from coming, and then use this as kind of the rescue operation. I think that is the way to handle it, not just depend on this to clean everything up. So I think that's important, to still have a good pre-emerge program. As far as the 15-inch versus 30-inch beans, we had 30-inch beans last year on one field. We didn't have any this year. So I'm applying early on my 15-inch beans with the See&Spray operation. We're mostly after volunteer corn, and I've got a field or two that's got mare's tail in it and things like that. And then my second application is usually after canopy. So I'm usually spraying Memorial Day and July 4th. It seems like it's always on holidays when we're spraying. So July 4th, our beans have canopied, and we're not after anything below the canopy. We're just after that volunteer corn that's shut up through it, any mare's tail that's sticking up through it, or Johnson grass or anything like that. So we're just trying to get anything that's sticking up. And that application, I mean, we maybe are applying 10% into the field because there's really just not much out there. So it's pretty cheap application, and not even necessary on some fields. So we don't spray every acre necessarily, but we only applied 25% on our soybeans last year on those two applications total. So I would say we probably were 30 on one and 20 on the other. The second application is what we would have been.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Clint. So Emily, I believe you have a slide for Jesse now, right? That Jesse is going to use to tackle. So Jesse, I'm going to pass it on to you now.
Savings have been pretty significant for me. I really crunched my numbers pretty hard for this last year, and it definitely made me feel pretty good when I was done. I saved about $36,000 on my herbicide costs this last year, so that's about $1,950 an acre. I ran my weeded over about 1,850 acres this year, 3 to 5 passes, so 7,300 acres covered. So that savings, that was money right in my pocket. There's a bit more to the story though, because due to the fact that it will miss really small weeds, I have to make an extra herbicide pass each summer. So where I would make 3 to 4 passes broadcast, now I'm making 4 to 5. And so plus there's the depreciation cost of that machine. So my result net benefit was about 12-15 acre in savings. But there's more to that as well. You talk about what are we doing with these savings? Well, I definitely reinvested in a more aggressive herbicide mix to try and prevent herbicide resistance. The herbicide mix I used, if I was to spray that broadcast, that would have cost me, let's see where my numbers are in here. I think it would have cost me over $40 an acre. And so it cost me $62 an acre if I would have done that same herbicide mixes across all my acres. So to get that from 62 down to 1525, that's a $46 an acre savings, so 86 grand a year. That pretty much makes my system pay for itself in 2 years. Now, how do you put a value on managing herbicide resistance? It doesn't make us any money this year, but down the road, it's worth a lot. So, the best I can do is compare what it would have been had I sprayed those same herbicide mixes across every acre. And so that definitely makes me feel pretty good.
Thank you, Jesse. That's a battle we deal every time, right? Especially when commodity prices, they're low. It's hard to put a dollar sign to that, right? The long-term management, and you bring up a very, very good point. So one, question that I have for you, Jesse, and I'm going to ask our other speakers as well, is have you had repair or maintenance issues with your hardware? And then for your case, a little different, the software piece, but what are the needs for updates and access to service, right? Because I think that's something that's going to be very important when a grower is making a decision, right? Not just the purchase itself, but it also be able to maintain that system working. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, real quick, add something to my previous comments. So the WEDA system does not have any per acre fees. So once you own it, it's paid for and that's it. As far as like this last year that I used for comparison purposes, on one hand, herbicide costs were down from what they've been a couple of years ago, so my savings are less. But on the other hand, it was a pretty dry year, so we don't get any rain over the summer. Our last rain was in May, and then it didn't rain again until 2 weeks ago, and so we don't have a lot of weed pressure, so the savings are probably higher. So factor that into whatever you're looking at. As far as like maintenance and repair costs, as long as it's a sprayer, so as long as I don't run it into anything, it doesn't break. So, as long as I avoid the fences and the power poles, we're doing pretty good. So far, I've had one of the sensors fail, but that was replaced for warranty. They're about $3,000 a piece, so you really don't want to whack them into anything. But other than that, the system's been very reliable. I know the newest WEDA system, the Quattro system, they changed a lot of their cabling, and it's been much improved. Not as the system that I currently have. And so I've really had no reliability or maintenance issues with it so far. But I'm only on my second year, so time will tell.
So any basic maintenance you do to this sprayer, any special thing you do, let's say every day after you're done spraying there, Jesse?
No, not really. When I set up my system, I did set it up with recirculating booms. So particularly if I'm spraying paraquat, that's pretty nasty stuff. I like to flush my booms out with water at the end of the day. Other than that, the maintenance on it isn't really any different than any other sprayer.
Awesome. Thank you.
One issue with it, kind of getting back to the ROI thing, it is kind of a one-trick pony. I really think to have a weed that works best, it needs to be on its own sprayer. So, like, I do have another self-propelled sprayer that I do my in-crop spraying with, and any broadcast applications. You can broadcast spray with a weed sprayer just fine, but it's narrower. My other sprayer is 120 feet, and I can go a little faster. So there is that cost associated with it too, and that was built into my calculations for my net return of $12.50 an acre.
So let me ask you a question then, Jesse. When you made a decision to purchase the weed, did you consider some of the other technologies that could do the green on green? And if so, what was the reason why you chose the weed?
So I was pretty much stuck on the weed it. I mean, the other thing I was looking at was a weed seeker, which again is very similar in operation to the weed it. Part of the reason I went with the weed it is there's a lot of them in this area. They've been around here for quite a few years. The dealer support is very good. In fact, I think the largest weed it dealer in North America is my local dealer. And so, I had a chance to see how they work for the grower. It was a lower risk proposition just because I've seen so many other systems used in this area. The green on green technology would be great, but I'm not making as many in-crop herbicide passes. It's places where they get more rain, have more weed pressure. So it'd be a longer ROI for me for those technologies.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Clint, maybe we'll hear from you next as far as repair or maintenance issues.
Sure. We normally trade every year, so we don't have any long-term issues, I guess. But we did have one camera go out this year. First time that's ever happened. I was, I was a little concerned because we farm about 80 miles spread, and we were on our far west farm, so it was a same dealer network but different dealer. And we bought the system from to come out and look at it, and the technician that looked at it, I never had met him before, didn't know if he knew anything about it, but I was very impressed. I mean, they were well educated, understood everything. Figured the problem out immediately, got the camera ordered. It obviously didn't have one. They're expensive to keep in stock, I'm sure, but got the camera ordered and put on and recalibrated for us. And so it was really, I was impressed with that part of it, that the whole network of dealers knew it, not just the one we bought it from. So that was encouraging that they have trained technicians. And that's one of the probably advantages that the John Deere system has, is they've got a pretty good dealer network, and the dealers are usually trained really well. So they did a good job there. Other than that, no issues. We every once in a while we'll have to clean a lens off behind the tires whenever they were back behind there, whenever we was running the dust and stuff. But even that didn't happen, very often at all. So that was one of the things we are a little concerned about, is that we're going to have dust issues, because it's running down there and chemicals swirling if you have a windy day and it gets covered up and things. But we really haven't had that issue hardly at all.
That's good news. Thanks for sharing that. We'll pass it on to you, Tyler.
Yeah, we didn't have any big breakdowns that related directly to See&Spray. The only things we noticed that happened to him, the camera went out, and my local dealer told me they're about $1,100 a piece, and they're hanging out on the very end. And some of the co-op drivers around here find the field edges by just running their boom off the trees and the fence lines. So when you got $1,100 cameras hanging off the end of your boom, it makes you a little more skeptical about how you drive and who you spray for. So knock on wood, I never hit it and never broke it off, but my dealer did say he has a couple on stock for me, so I appreciate that he has them in stock. The only other thing we found is when we inspected my sprayer at the end of the year, all the bushings that we replaced when we put See&Spray on failed the test to go forward to next year and needed to be replaced to stay within the specs for the boom stability. So bushings aren't a big deal. It takes a little bit of time and it has some cost. I don't know offhand, but it wasn't something I really thought of. But to have to put boom bushings in every year is an expense that people don't really think of. It's not a major one, but that's about the only thing I can think of. And then just having some window cleaner in the cab for dust, which I think I only had to clean the cameras once or twice this year. So not a big deal. It's just more when you have the See&Spray system on a normal sprayer that we spray a lot of other acres with. It's after you go do bean fungicide or burn down on something else or go spray alfalfa, and you come back to the See&Spray after you just put a couple thousand acres on, you kind of hold your breath to see if the system's all going to work and the cameras are all online. But luckily this year, everything worked for us.
Fantastic. Thank you. So now I'm going to have two more questions for you guys. And this is a question I get all the time when we're discussing targeted spray technology with growers. Maybe, Jesse, I'm going to start off with you there. The question is, how do you estimate the mix size to avoid dealing with overage? That question comes up all the time because we don't want to have waste at the end, right?
Right. No, I've heard that one quite a bit as well. So when I'm spraying fallow, I'm going to go right from one field to the next. So it really only matters when I get to my last field, how much I have left over at that point. So it's not nearly as big of a deal for the way I use my sprayer as it might be under other applications. With that being said, I can look at a field now and get a pretty good idea of where I'm going to be at. If anything, I usually end up with a little bit more spray than I need, which is definitely less hassle. I don't have to run back and mix up another tank. But you get an eye for it, and you can usually guess pretty close. Any that I have left over when I'm done with an application, it's usually less than a couple hundred gallons of mixed spray. I'll just hold on to it and mix it in the next round. The herbicides that I'm using during my fallow period are pretty stable, and I think Roundup's good forever, quite frankly. And even the parapot mixes, they seem to last just fine. Stuff dies. When I'm coming back 3 or 4 weeks later, it all still dies. It all still works. So, at the end of the year, maybe I'll have 100 gallons left over or something. I'll use that to spray out borders.
Thank you, Jesse. Clint, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. You kind of get a feel for it. We are going over enough acres. We usually fill up one time, and once I've sprayed that tank full out, I know we're spraying 25% of the acre. So I know that's probably, it's going to follow that trend. And you also get a feel for your history. You know, over the years, this field's going to be, real weedy. So maybe I save it to the end so I know I can get empty and things like that. So you start to learn that. And now custom guys where they're just going to do 1 or 2 fields, yeah, that can be an issue. I know there's, but I think once a guy's done it a couple of times, he'll start to learn the history of that field, and it's usually very similar. It seems like from time to time, and it depends what you're chasing and what crop you're doing it. But it's kind of just a feel for it. And like you said, the more experience you have with the system, the more you start to really understand that. And we can also fine tune settings, where we're making a bigger broadcast window or a wider window. And so if I get to the end of the day and I need to get rid of chemical, I can open that up and be a little more free with the chemical. If I think I'm gonna be a little short, I can narrow the windows down a little bit and try to get to the end, because nobody wants to go back and fill up 50 gallons because it's impossible to do it. So that's kind of another way we use to try to adjust that a little bit at the end if we're needing to get empty or need to stretch it.
Thank you, Clint. Tyler.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off what Jesse and Clint said. I was worried about it at the start. I was wondering how I could empty my tank or set up totes or get stainless cone bottom tanks to keep mixing if I had any extra. And after you spray a little bit and kind of take really good notes and you get a mental picture of what things look like from the cab, you have a pretty good idea after you spray a tank or two what your averages are, how much you're actually spraying. Like Clint said, if you save your weediest field for the end, you know it's going to spray more. And if you have 100 acres left and you have 300 acres worth of mix, you can turn it to broadcast too, which you don't get any savings, but then you also don't have any chemical left. So there are ways to fine tune it. It was never really an issue. I just know when I went out to spray, I'd always have the fields I wanted to spray in mind, and then I'd always have a field or two extra that were close or on the next stage that were going to be sprayed tomorrow, the next day, to go clean and rinse or just get the tank empty in. So luckily, the big advantage that we saw with See&Spray that nobody's really talked about yet, I want to make sure got brought up, is the time savings you have in mixing and loading chemical. I mean, I used to spray 8 to 10 loads a day, and now with See&Spray, I sprayed my whole post corn on 3 or 4 loads. I mean, you can mix 2 loads a day and go spray all day. So that part of it is just really, really cool that you can start in the morning and you don't need a tender driver hardly, because you can go spray 200 to 300 acres on a load sometimes. So fine tuning that is tricky, but you save so much time. You have a little bit more time to go scout or go spray. So we were really happy with that part of it. And the other, getting kind of off track here, the other part we liked about it is you're handling and mixing so much less chemical. You're storing so much less chemical. You're exposed to so much less spills. And I run the sprayer myself. I mix it myself. Why do I want to deal with more chemicals than I have to if I can only mix 2 loads a day? That was a huge benefit for us.
No, thanks for sharing that, Tyler. I think it's hard to add a dollar sign to that piece when making this equation. So listening what you all just shared here, it's very, very inspiring, I would say. So again, I mean, what seems to be a big concern once you start adopting the technology, once you start getting experienced with the technology, and if you have a good planning there, the overage of product here seems to not be a major concern. So I appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to ask the final question that I have for you three. Maybe Tyler, I'll start off with you. So do you foresee wider adoption of these technologies in the near future? And if so, why? And then how can we keep our herbicide-resistant weeds at bay using this technology? So it's kind of loaded here, but we can end strong, I would say, before we pass it back to Emily. So Tyler.
Kind of a loaded question, because I already have 3 friends that have bought the See&Spray system for next year already. So Deere must have had an early order program out or something, but out of the handful of farmer friends I have, 2 or 3 of them have already purchased it. So that tells me that John Deere is really trying to get this out, and people are seeing that the bottom line may not look as good as it has in years past, and are looking for ways to cut costs in any way they can. And I think John Deere's done a great job of marketing, getting out there. I know along with this webinar, I've seen a couple other emails that John Deere is putting on themselves to get farmers to sit down and talk, and farmers seem to adopt things from other farmer experience. And I had a good experience. Sounds like Clint and Jesse has too, with a little bit different system, but I think farmers will adopt it. The only hesitation I have is that the system is not for everybody. And if people think that they're going to get away with a one-pass system and they have a huge weed bank, it could be a total disaster, and will be going backwards from where we want to go with clean fields and resistant weeds and an integrated pest management standpoint. So I'm skeptical about that. I think to make these systems work, there has to be a lot of management. You have to have other steps in place, a good pre-down, a lot of residual. So that'll be interesting to see as more and more farmers adopt this, how that looks and what that does to the numbers and the weed pressure around. It seems like the early adopters are somewhat maybe better than average managers on the farm, as they were already doing a good job managing their weeds, and this was just another tool in their toolbox to help. And they wanted to make it work because they had a lot invested in it. Going forward, as it gets more broad spectrum, will that level of management be there? Will people see this as the easy button and kind of abuse it? It'll be something to see. It's kind of like when everybody just sprayed their soybeans with Roundup and it killed everything, and they sprayed a quart, and then they went down to 24 ounces, and then they went down to 18 ounces, and now Roundup, they wonder why they have so many resistant weeds. So it'll be curious if the same thing happens with this technology. But from our standpoint, I see it catching on from a time-saving standpoint on the farmer level, helping with weeds. You're able to use a heavier tank mix, and you can afford a higher price tank mix with more efficacy because you're not spraying it over every acre. The only holdup I do see is on the custom side of things, or if the co-op sprays, because the co-ops make a pretty good margin selling you chemicals. So why are they going to want to adopt technology that's going to hurt the amount of chemicals they sell? So it'll be interesting to see from that standpoint how they catch on. But from a farmer standpoint, I do think that this technology will catch on.
Thank you for sharing all that, Tyler. I think this farmer-to-farmer communication exchange is crucial. And then, I think I truly look forward to hopefully working with you next year and then getting to learn more and see what your challenges are so that we can bring into research programs and hopefully continue to help all the farmers out there fine-tune the system. So I appreciate you sharing out that. And I truly appreciate you being here today with us. This has been very, very special learning from you. So Clint, I would like to invite you to share your thoughts next.
Sure. Yeah, I do think the technology will be adapted widely. I think it's makes economic sense for everybody whenever they look at the numbers, and like you said, when you see other farmers doing it and they're good farmers, successful farmers, then you start asking questions. Well, why are you doing that? And I think that's how it'll be spread. A couple other things. I agree with what Tyler said about the time savings on a sprayer, not having to go fill up. I used to, half of our time was spent spraying, half of it was spent filling up and roading. And with the See&Spray system, I would say we're probably 2/3 of the time spent spraying. And if it's costing me $200 an hour to run a sprayer, you take those hours, and that tells you how much you're just saving and not having to go back and fill up as often. So there's some value there that you don't always think about, but that does matter. If you're actually spraying instead of roading back to fill up all the time, it can make a big difference too. And talk about efficiency. I can go out without having somebody tender to me because I only got to fill up twice a day, and so that's a personnel savings. I don't have to have somebody out there with a CDL chasing me around all day. So there's some benefits there too. So and I think as the technology grows, I think chemical companies are going to be challenged to say, what can we bring to the market that's more effective? Maybe it was too expensive of a chemical to broadcast, but in a See&Spray application, can we do this and we can control some of these weeds that we're having issues with, so they can start to develop some things. And same way with nozzles. Their nozzles need to be changed. Do we need to adjust what we're doing there or figure out better ways to do things? And so I think the whole spray industry, we're just on the leading edge of this technology, and I think there's lots of development on all different fronts for us to improve what we're doing and to get a more efficient herbicide program and things like that are gonna really change how we do things. And I'm just glad that we're on the leading edge of it, and hope things continue to develop and the research and development gets put into the systems and the chemical and the nozzles.
We do indeed. Clint, thanks for sharing all that. And I'm just going to echo what I just said to Tyler. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've learned a lot here. I'm taking a lot of notes. I have some of my students and staff here on this call, and they know that's a problem when we're taking a lot of notes, because that's going to be a lot more projects for us next year. But that's what this is all about. So Jesse, I'll let you take us home here.
Yeah, I'm pretty much just going to repeat what Clint and Tyler said. I definitely think we're going to see more adoption. The biggest obstacle for the system I'm running is just that upfront cost. As long as you have enough acres to spread that out over, it's kind of a no-brainer. We're looking at 2-year ROI. I think for most growers, it's going to become mandatory to remain competitive. When your neighbor can spend half the bill on herbicide and get a better job than you can, it's pretty tough to look at and not adopt yourself.
And then Jesse, real quick here, if I recall correctly, did you mention programs that can help you purchase this technology up front? Was that you that had some information on that?
Yeah, if anyone participates in the CSP program, there's pretty good funding available. There's specific CSP enhancements that reference spot spraying technology, no matter what it may be. And so, my system was largely paid for using that program. So that's definitely worth looking into if you're willing to jump through the CSP hoops.
Thank you. Thanks again, Jesse, for everything. Thanks for being here. With that, I want to thank our 3 panelists here so much, Jesse, Tyler, and Clint. I also want to thank Emily for putting this big show together. Emily, we truly appreciate all that you do to support weed management education. Thank you so very much for everything again that you do. I want to thank the Grow Group for the opportunity, for inviting me to serve as a moderator. I certainly enjoyed this conversation so much, and I took so many notes. I learned a lot, so thank you very much. It's been an honor serving as your host and moderator here today. I also want to thank my colleagues, Dr. Michael Flassner and Dr. Mark Van Gassel, and I'm actually going to let them end the show here. So Emily, Michael, Mark, the mic is yours. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Rodrigo. This was great. Excellent moderation. Really appreciate you and the farmers giving us so much of your time. If anybody can stick around, we have a handful of questions in the chat box. Most of them got answered because you all were extremely thorough in this discussion, but there's just a handful coming through. So if people can hang on with us, Mark and Michael are going to toss those out to you and to the panel, Rodrigo. But if people need to drop off, by all means, we understand.
Yeah, there's a couple easy, quick ones. One of them for I guess Clint and Tyler with the See&Spray technology. What was your sensitivity level when using See&Spray?
I have that written down here somewhere. I think I think there were 5 settings, and I think I spent most of the year at medium sensitivity. Throw it over to Clint.
Yeah, that's where we were, and it would vary. I mean, we would adjust it. Sometimes if it was set to the most sensitive, it seemed like we'd want to broadcast, so we know we were too sensitive, we'd turn it back down. We'd also adjust the width a little bit. Usually run it on the medium as well. So it seemed like no matter where we had it set, we didn't have issues with skips. So I think we could turn it down and probably be more, save more money. But until you get the trust in the system, you always err on the side of making sure you're getting coverage. But it's definitely something we look at and we'll continue to monitor and try to increase the savings if we can.
Great. Somewhat related to that is a question of, do you enter a field and choose to not target spray because of minimum savings seen in the field? If so, where have you seen that threshold to not operate the system? Maybe we'll start with you, Clint, since you're still unmuted.
Sure. Yeah, and usually I think somebody had said this earlier, but the outside boundaries are usually the weediest, and so you'll spray we usually spray our outside passes first, so we'll spray around the field, and I've left See&Spray on when I'm up to probably 75% and on the outside boundary, and realize once I get inside, it's usually going to be quite a bit less. But It all depends on the tank mix. If it's a real expensive tank mix, I can leave it on for till we get up to that 75-80%. If it's a cheap one, then yeah, for over 50-60%, I may not use it. So it just kind of depends if you're in crop or if you're fallow and what your goals are. But yeah, and you can change it on the go. I mean, I can hit a button and turn it on and off as I'm going through. So if I think it's really bad, I can just shut it off, and then all of a sudden I say, well, there's not much here on this end of the field. I can turn it back on just as I'm spraying through the field. So that gives me the ability to kind of just do it wherever I really think it's needed, if it's a field that really changes from one side to the other.
Jesse, do you want to jump in on that? Is there a minimum savings that you want to see when you pull into a field, or if not, you'll broadcast?
Pretty much every time I intend to use the weed, I stick with it. You'll look at a field and be like, oh, I'm not going to save anything on this thing, but you use it anyway. Almost every time you end up spraying less than half the acres. So it can look really bad and you're still way ahead to use the spot spray technology.
Great. There's a couple other questions. Maybe Rodrigo, you can help us out with. Has there been any studies done comparing a pulse modulated width technology to a targeted spraying technology?
Yeah, so I'll let the farmers maybe tackle that one. But when you're using the targeted spray technologies, you are relying on the PWM system, right, for that nozzle activation. So I think the targeted spray technologies, at least the ones I'm familiar with, they run through the PWM system to enable that on and off of your nozzles. I hope that addresses it, Michael. And if the farmers have any additional thoughts, I welcome them.
So we are using PWM, but whenever we are doing See&Spray, we only broadcast out of that. It's what turns the nozzle on and off for us, but it does not pulse because they're worried about any skips because you're just on for a certain amount of time. So that if you're running 50% pulse and it turns on, but it's right at the beginning of that skip, you may not get contact. So that's how we're using PWM. It's just as an on-off mechanism, not as a pulsing mechanism while we spray.
Thanks for clarifying that, Clint. Yep.
Great. Yeah, I think the pulse modulated with, as you're making turns or avoiding overlaps in spray, you get some savings, but it's not the level of savings you get with these targeted systems. I think that is. Oh, there is one question I thought would be worthwhile. Are any of these systems used for insecticides or even fungicides, or perhaps maybe they will be in the future? But I think right now it's just herbicides. Is that correct?
If I understand where that question is coming from, so in different parts of the globe, like for insecticides and fungicides, what some of those technologies do, they only spray on what's green, right? So I think the technologies that we discussed here today are primarily focused on weeds, but there are technologies evolving where you could target apply a fungicide. If you're targeting, let's say, a soybean crop, for example, that would only deliver that fungicide where the soybean crop is. I don't think that's what we discussed here today, but that's where some of the technologies are going for sure, Michael. And then for this, if one wants to do a broadcast fungicide or insecticide and target spray, let's say volunteer corn herbicide and soybeans to control those volunteer corn, that's where that dual tank becomes very important, where you spot spray your herbicide to control volunteer corn and can still do a broadcast application of your either fungicide or insecticide. So I hope I addressed that.
Yep, perfect. And yep, I think that's all the questions.
One final one here, Michael, that I see is the potential for retrofitting equipment, right? I think that's an important one. So for instance, Tyler talked about See&Spray Premium. My understanding is that can be retrofitted to any John Deere sprayer that's 2018 or newer, right? That has the exact apply system. So for instance, that's an example. But then another example would be the Green Eye technology. You can add that to a new sprayer, or you can retrofit the Green Eye technology into existing sprayers And I think the same applies to Jesse with the weed it. It is possible to add that to a new sprayer, retrofit to an existing sprayer. Jesse made the point that he spent a lot more money on the technology than in the sprayer itself. So yeah, it is possible to retrofit some of these technologies. I think the ones that cannot be retrofitted are the ones, for instance, the Ultimate, you have to buy a new system in order to have access to that. The technology that my group has been working with, the One Smart Spray, it's only going to be available in new sprayers, at least as of now, as far as I'm aware. So that is a good question that I wanted to address. So thank you.
Great, thank you. We cranked through a lot of questions, and thank you guys for hanging on a little past the 90-minute mark. This was great. You know, we've talked about how much farmers prefer to learn from other farmers, especially with new and emerging technologies. And the key there is that there are farmers who are trying it out, who are willing to take time to do things like this. So thank you, Clint and Tyler and Jesse. I know you guys have other things to do, and we so appreciate you being here and sharing your experience and putting yourselves out there. And the same to you, Rodrigo. I know this is a busy time of year, so you've given us a lot of your time. You all have. So I'm going to let everybody go. If anyone has any questions after this about grow, take action, anything we talked about, anything for the panelists, you can find me online pretty easily on the Grow website. And I'll put my email here in the chat. But otherwise, thank you to everybody. Go enjoy your week, and subscribe to Grow and Take Action if you want more great information on integrated weed management.